Okay, so you want to know the top 5 cool things we learned in the second month. Okay, so the first cool thing we learned was all about clinical skills. So we learned things like venipuncture, urine dipstick analysis, and CPR. So within the venipuncture, we learned how to get blood from a patient and then send that to the lab. We also learned like the colors of tubes you have to use for certain types of lab tests. And the second thing we learned was urine dipsticks. So urine analysis is very important and it plays an important role in 3 things. So it's managing diabetes and diagnosing diabetes, as well as diagnosing UTIs, which is urinary tract infections, as well as analyzing kidney performance. So how you do a urine analysis, you'll get the sample from the patient. So firstly, you do a macroscopic examination of the urine that the patient gave you. So you look for 4 things. So you look for the color, clarity, odor, and volume. If the urine looks red or pink, this is a sign of blood within the urine. If the urine looks like cloudy or opaque, this can be a sign of a UTI, of a urinary tract infection. Then you move on to the chemical part of the test. So this is where you actually would use your urine dipstick. We dip it in the urine for like 10 seconds, and then you take it out for 30 to 2 minutes depending on what type of dipstick you use, and then you will look and compare if there's any problems within the urine. Lastly, you may want to do a microscopic test of the urine, so you want to send it off to the lab to do MCNS, which is microscopy, culture, and susceptibility testing. So this is basically where you think there's a pathogen within the urine and you want to isolate that pathogen and know which antibiotics to use. Okay, so the third thing we learned within this clinical skills section was everything to do with CPR. So this was how to identify if someone's in cardiac arrest and what your next step should be. So we learned how to do CPR on an adult, a child, and a baby. We also learned how to use the defibrillator and everything surrounding that. What the number is for the ambulance and all those things. So this was a very informative section, and it's something that you can use to save someone's life essentially. So it was also very, very cool to learn. And the second cool thing we learned within 2 months of medicine was everything regarding HIV. And as you guys probably know, South Africa has a massive HIV burden. In 2019, there was around 7.9 million people living with HIV in South Africa. So we learned everything regarding HIV. Its structure, its life cycle, the subtypes. Like in South Africa, you have subtype C. We learned the drugs to treat HIV, and we also learned like the psychological impact that HIV has on a person. We also looked at the different stages of HIV and AIDS and how to identify it within a patient. The third cool thing we did in the second month of medicine was we went for nursing visits. So this is the first time we went in hospital to a hospital setting. So my group went for 2 weeks to Charlotte Maxeke and 1 week to Witstrand Gordon. So this was very cool. We had to go to the hospitals, see patients in a real clinical setting, and converse with patients and things like that. Even though at that stage we didn't have a lot of medicine knowledge, it was still very, very cool to see. Fourth thing we learned within the second month of medicine is everything regarding cancer. So we learned different types of tumors, like the difference between a carcinoma and a sarcoma. We learned a lot of childhood developmental tumors and things like melanomas. We also learned the staging, like the TMN staging to stage cancer, and also the melanoma staging, which was the Clark and Breslow thickness tumor scaling. So we learned a lot about different types of tumors, how to identify them in a patient, how they occur, and things like that. So it's very, very interesting. The cool thing we learned within the second month of medicine was everything regarding soft tissue infections. So this included things like bite wounds, surgical infections, burn wounds, also all your cellulitis, your necrotizing fasciitis, different types of gangrene, toxic shock syndrome, all these kinds of things. To me, this was a very interesting section as well, as how to prevent rabies in a bite wound, and how to prevent surgical infections, and how to treat surgical infections, how to see gangrene, all these types of things, gas gangrene, all these things. It was very gruesome to look at, but it's also very, very interesting. So this was the top 5 things we learned within the second month of medicine. Thank you guys for watching my video till the end. Like if you liked the video, and subscribe to my channel.